Welcome back to Stamps Old World UK, the channel where we bring you the stories, history, and current market values of some of the most fascinating stamps ever issued. Today, we will take a closer look at another truly iconic stamp, the United States George Washington 2-cent red stamp. This stamp is one of the most commonly seen Washington stamps, but despite its wide circulation, it continues to intrigue collectors around the globe. The bold red color, the ornate frame, and of course the portrait of George Washington make it not only a piece of American history, but also a collectible treasure that has stood the test of time. The Washington 2-cent stamp was first issued in the early 20th century, and it quickly became one of the most heavily used stamps in American postal history. Because it was so widely produced and circulated, millions upon millions of copies were printed. This makes it one of the most recognizable Washington stamps to this day. However, as with all stamps, condition, rarity, and printing variations play a huge role in determining the value. The majority of circulated 2-cent red Washington stamps are not considered rare, but certain varieties can be worth much more than their face value. Let's talk about the market value in today's collector market. A common used example of the George Washington 2-cent red stamp, one that has a clear cancellation mark and average condition, usually sells for a very modest price, often between $1 and $3. This is due to the enormous quantities that were originally printed. But the story does not end there. If you happen to own a mint condition stamp, never hinged, with the original gum intact, the value immediately rises. Mint copies can range from $5 to $20 depending on the quality of centering and preservation. Perfectly centered, well-preserved mint copies can command even higher prices from serious collectors. What truly makes some of these stamps exciting is the presence of printing errors or rare varieties. Collectors actively search for double impressions, inverted watermarks, color variations, and perforation differences. These unusual versions can transform what would normally be a common $1 stamp into a collectible worth hundreds, or in rare cases, even thousands of dollars. For example, there are known varieties of the Washington 2-cent stamp that have misaligned perforations or shifts in printing, and these errors make them highly desirable in auctions. Serious philatelists are willing to pay a significant premium for these rare finds. Another aspect that influences value is the historical context of the issue. The Washington 2-cent red stamp was not only a piece of postage, but also a symbol of the United States' admiration for its founding father. Because of this, the stamp is also collected worldwide, not just in the United States. International collectors, especially those focusing on early 20th century American stamps, often compete for the finest examples. This international demand keeps the market active, ensuring that the 2-cent Washington stamp remains a staple in stamp collections everywhere. It is also important to note that stamp grading plays a significant role in price. Stamps that are well-centered, with sharp impressions and no damage, are always worth more than poorly centered or damaged copies. Collectors and dealers often grade stamps based on centering, gum condition, perforations, and color. So if you own one of these stamps, even if it looks common, it is worth taking a closer look to see if its condition or details set it apart from the ordinary. In conclusion, the George Washington 2-cent red stamp may be one of the most widely circulated stamps in U.S. history, but it is far from being just a piece of paper. Its value in today's market ranges from just $1 or $2 for circulated examples up to hundreds or even more for rare varieties or perfect condition copies. It is a stamp that every collector should know about, whether you are just starting your collection or have been collecting for decades. It represents history, artistry, and the timeless appeal of philately.
Next up, the most famous and instantly recognizable stamps of the United States, the George Washington 1-cent green stamp. This stamp has a long and fascinating history, and while it was one of the most commonly used stamps of its time, it remains an essential part of many collections and still carries value in today's collector market. The George Washington 1-cent green stamp was issued in various series during the early 20th century, and the example we are looking at today was released in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of Washington's birth. This commemorative issue features a side-profile portrait of George Washington framed by two classical columns, and it stands out with its rich green color. During its circulation, the 1-cent Washington stamp was widely used for basic postage, meaning that millions of them were printed and distributed. As a result, it is not considered rare in its most common form, but, as we will soon see, there are many factors that can influence its market value. Let's dive into the value of this stamp in today's collector market. For common, used examples where the stamp has a cancellation mark and shows signs of regular postal use, the value is usually very modest, often ranging between $1 and $2. Because of the huge number of these stamps produced, circulated examples are abundant. However, mint-condition copies, especially those that are well-centered and have full original gum, are much more sought after by collectors. A mint, never-hinged example in excellent condition can typically range from $5 to $20, depending on its quality. But what makes this stamp truly interesting to serious collectors is the presence of rare varieties and printing errors. Throughout its production, variations in perforation, printing shifts, and even color shades occurred. These variations are what transform a very common stamp into a collectible treasure. For example, stamps with misaligned perforations, unusual shades of green, or double prints are significantly more valuable, sometimes fetching hundreds of dollars at auction. Collectors actively seek out these rare versions because they are much harder to find compared to the standard issues. Another important factor in determining the value is stamp grading. A George Washington 1-cent green stamp that is well-centered, with sharp detail, strong color, and no tears or creases will always command a higher price. Poorly centered or damaged stamps, even if mint, are worth considerably less. Professional grading services often evaluate these stamps to provide an official certification of condition, which can increase collector confidence and, ultimately, market value. Beyond monetary value, this stamp has a strong historical appeal. Issued to honor the bicentennial of Washington's birth, it carries with it a legacy of patriotism and respect for one of the most important figures in American history. This historical connection adds to its desirability, not just for American collectors, but for philatelists around the world who admire the figure of George Washington as a global symbol of leadership and independence. In conclusion, the George Washington 1-cent green stamp is a fascinating collectible that bridges history and philately. Its common forms may only be worth $1 or $2, but in mint condition or as part of a rare variation, its value can rise dramatically. Whether you are a new collector starting your journey or an experienced philatelist searching for rare gems, this stamp offers a rewarding experience. It represents not only a piece of postal history, but also a celebration of George Washington's enduring legacy.
Next up, the United States George Washington 5-cent stamp. This stamp is one of the most recognizable and historically significant pieces of postal history. Featuring the portrait of George Washington, the first president of the United States and one of the most respected figures in world history. The design, printed in deep blue ink, shows Washington in a striking portrait that highlights the artistry and engraving detail of the time. The Washington 5-cent stamp has been printed in several series over the years, but the one most collectors think of is the mid-20th century version. Stamps like this were not just pieces of paper used to send letters, they were miniature works of art and historical reminders of the past. During its circulation, this 5-cent stamp was widely used in the United States, making it a common sight on envelopes. However, despite being produced in large quantities, the stamp has become a significant collectible due to its age, design, and connection to American history. Now, let's talk about what collectors truly want to know: the market value today in dollars. The George Washington 5-cent stamp, depending on its condition, rarity, and printing variation, can range widely in value. A common used copy, meaning one that has been circulated and bears a postal cancellation mark, may only be worth a small amount, often between $1 and $5. This is because millions of these stamps were printed and used. However, mint condition stamps, meaning those that were never used, still with their original gum on the back, are much more desirable to collectors. A clean, well-preserved mint condition example can range from $10 to $20 on the lower end. In some cases, depending on grading quality, centering, and historical edition, the value can rise much higher. What really excites serious collectors is when rare variations or printing errors appear. Stamps that have misprints, unusual perforations, or color variations could skyrocket in value. A George Washington 5-cent stamp with such an error could easily fetch hundreds of dollars or even more at auction. Collectors around the world keep an eye on specialized catalogs and auction houses to find these gems. Auction results in the past show that unique or rare examples of this stamp have sold for far above their estimated values, proving once again that the world of philately is full of surprises and opportunities. Another factor that influences the price is the demand among international collectors. George Washington is not just a figure of importance in American history. He is recognized worldwide as a symbol of leadership and independence. Because of this, collectors from Europe, Asia, and beyond are often willing to pay a premium for a piece of history like the Washington 5-cent stamp. This international demand has kept the market for this stamp active and steadily growing in recent years. For beginners entering the world of stamp collecting, the Washington 5-cent stamp is an excellent starting point. It's affordable in its common forms, but still carries deep historical value and a strong presence in the philatelic market. For experienced collectors, the challenge is to find rare editions, perfect condition examples, or unusual varieties that can add both prestige and monetary value to their collection. Whether you are just beginning or are already an expert, the Washington 5-cent stamp offers something for everyone. In conclusion, the George Washington 5-cent stamp is not just a simple piece of postage history. It represents a bridge between history, art, and collecting culture. Its current market value ranges from just a few dollars for common used examples to potentially hundreds for rare and unique pieces. As with any collectible, condition is key, rarity is gold, and demand drives the final price. If you have one of these stamps in your collection, take a moment to appreciate its story, and if you are in the market to buy, do your research. Look for quality, and perhaps you may find a hidden treasure. Thank you for watching Stamps Old World UK. If you enjoyed learning about the George Washington 5-cent stamp and want to discover more about rare and valuable stamps from around the world, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into the world of philately. Leave a comment below if you own a Washington 5-cent stamp or if there is a particular stamp you would like us to cover in the future. Until next time, keep collecting and keep the history of stamps alive.